Has he tried anything new? Does Don Paragon mean anything to you? Don Paragon. Paragon, okay, that's it. Don Paragon, that's fine. Right, but Don
I am going. Oh, yeah. It's about 2 weeks.
Here's lower.
No Bob, no job.
Yeah. All right, everybody, if we call this council meeting to order at 6:30 and 24 seconds. Deputy, please, can you do the roll call, please?
Carter,
Here.
Ellis,
Here.
Bacon. Hodgkin,
Here.
Lawrence,
Here.
Mackey,
Here.
Morrison,
Here.
Newbill,
Here.
Bertini,
Here.
Fredo,
Here.
Sedor, Taylor,
Here.
Orr.
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like to note that Councilmember Gagan is on his way, he's running late, and I would like to make a motion to excuse Councilmember Seaver.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right, you want to stand for the pledge of allegiance, please?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. So now we'll go to public comments. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, please, and state your ward or your address and your name. Thanks. Just hold to the microphone, please.
Mayor. My name is Mike Abel. I live at 1201 East Market, Wishkah River. And I'm here tonight because I'm very concerned about this Market Street alignment that is on the agenda for tonight's discussion and vote. I heard about this vote secondhanded. We were not approached by anybody from the city saying that this was going to happen. I'm very disappointed in the lack of communication. If you look at the drawings and the maps, your option that you are evidently going to vote on tonight refers to illustrations 10 and 11 in the memorandum. If you look at those, my house is at ground zero. It shows where my house is, it no longer exists. There's either an earthen burn levee, there's gates, I don't understand. This is my home for 45 years. When were you gonna tell me? To vote on this tonight is just, I can't imagine that. You're talking to move forward with a project that I don't even know is necessary. And part of that project involves my home. Nobody contacted me, said, you're on, this is an option. And I'm really disappointed in each and every one of you. It's like we're second-class citizens because we live on the river. I love living on that river. Like I said, I've been there 45 years. I chose to live there. I've lived there through king tides, whatever you want to call them, twice. I've had a little bit of water in my yard. I've never had any structural damage. I knew the risks when I bought the house. It's not like, I can't speak for everybody along the river. It's not like we came crying to the city saying, we need help. We're fine. I think it's a huge debacle. I think that money could be otherwise spent. I just don't see it. And the fact that I'm just a little house on a map. No, this is me here. Citizen of 70 years. And I need an explanation.
So we're not really supposed to engage through these things, but, we could get your information and we'll get back with you. Sure. I'm sorry. I thought everybody was already notified about what's going on.
Well, you know, and there are others who feel the same way that live along there. It's like, we're the focus of all this funding and this money being spent supposedly for our own good, so we don't flood. We've never flooded. I said that over and over again. The city engineers, you know, we've been saying this group that live along the river, we've been saying this for years, but it just falls on deaf ears. I could live with a little bit of water in my yard once or twice a year at high tide. The water's in the yard for about an hour. Tide goes down, water goes in. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Gary.
My name is Lorraine Olson, and I live at 1230 East Second Street, probably a straight shot to that gentleman's house. And when we moved here, we're otherwise known as the Purple House. We're the second house away from the bridge. When we moved here, it was our intention, because of a lot of trauma that we had been through in the past 7 years. This was supposed to be our last move. I no sooner moved into the house and found out that the sellers and the real estate agent for selling the house lied to us. And I've got probably a worse situation than you do. Apparently the previous owner sold an easement to the city that goes right through my yard. And we spoke with some of the engineers, we spoke with Joel, and proposed a levee in the water, since FEMA's involved. That could be delivered to us. And my husband's cousin is a geological surveyor. He also thought that was a really smart idea. Last conversations we had, it seemed like they were entertaining that idea. But I don't know whether to believe anybody anymore here, because now I hear that it looks like the thing that they're gonna do is come out of the river, cut straight through our yard, take 10 feet of our yard, and not do the solution in the water. Our house has no bank left. Our fence is hanging on by the poles being in cement are only half in the dirt anymore. And if a right angle is made, going through our side yard and then going behind the houses from the third house down, we are gonna have bank eroding at a rapid rate. And I am here to find out what they have to say about that, because as far as I'm concerned, it's time to get a lawyer. And I will go and knock on every house affected. I work for the Department of Commerce. This kind of stuff can be avoided. I didn't hear very much of the notifications except for the meeting at the log pavilion. And we reviewed all the materials. I feel like we've been lied to. I don't know who is responsible, but this is ruining our life. I couldn't take any more trauma. You can probably hear from how my voice is a little shaky. I didn't survive an attempted murder, to finally buy a house and then find out they're running a levee through my fucking yard.
I think Nick,
Very upset.
there'll be a presentation on this too. A little bit. Anybody else?
And my name is Lori Birkin, and I live in a peculiar section of Ward 2, adjacent to Wards 3 and 5, with property owned at 1301 and 1307 Madison Street. I'm respectively requesting that the city council deny approval of the Public Works Department's request for confirmation of the proposed Market Street alignment presented here tonight. The proposed alignment presented in the memorandum dated April 3rd, 2024 has never been offered up to the residents of the impacted area for input, review, or public comment. How many of you 12 council members really fully understand this recommendation and its impact on the East Market Street neighborhood? How many of your constituents have been involved in the preparation of this recommendation? Who are the city staff and elected officials who were involved in the development of this creative alternative? Why do city officials continue to ignore answering our questions? The insanity of this process must stop now. So elevating Market Street with an integral flood wall down the center of the street is the best option? And all of this was concluded during a meeting in February? Was the team stoned when they came up with this option? Because it really is ludicrous. According to figure 11, the proposed recommendation, one of two, I'll have a raised roadway gracing my driveway with this proposed option. And my neighbors will have the top of the levee and a floodgate going right through their house. I realize this recommendation may simply be a procedural move to keep the project moving forward, and perhaps I'm overreacting, but honestly, I don't think I'm overreacting. I'm fighting for my home and for my neighbors right now. And nothing that has been presented to us thus far is good for any of us. FEMA removed our properties from zone AE to zone X, just like that. Why don't they do the same to downtown Aberdeen? So we will be on the wrong side of the levee. Think about that. What minimal property value we ever had is gone. None of us have ever flooded before, but put a wall and an elevated roadway behind our house, and it'll happen. I don't care what the engineers say. It's gonna happen. There's nowhere for water to go. What are the mitigation options that are going on? I know that doesn't happen until the EIS is gone through. So you cannot, in good conscience, approve this absurd recommendation. Many of us have lived at the mercy of the river for close to 50 years. Put a wall down Market Street and you've screwed all of us. The only option for logical consideration is the relocation option, consisting of an earthen berm on the south side of Market Street. With this levee issue staring us down, the only option the city of Aberdeen has is to buy all of us out at fair market value. Create a pretty little greenway for people to travel down. For what? For the next 25 or 50 years? At our expense. We'll give it to you at fair market value. Then your problem goes away and you have a nice tidy levee, 25 to 50. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? All right. So we have a presentation now from Nick Bird, and I just want to thank you, Nick, for all the work you guys have done on trying to, this is a really complicated puzzle piece to come up with a solution for, so I appreciate your efforts.
Well, thank you. Yeah. There's not an easy way to start after the presentation, or after the comments. The citizens are 100% right. I did not communicate with them when I succinctly apologize for the news. We do have We'll get into kind of the details here in a second. Becca, when I log in here, can you shoot me a invite? All right, so we're gonna jump in and kind of start back at square zero here. You'll see there's some presentation material that's gonna pop up on the screen. And as the council packet notes, we're here to talk about the North Shore Levy, Market Street, West River alignment recommendation. In normal cases, well, I'll get into the normal process here in a little bit. But basically, we wanted to go through a variety of different things here today to talk about an introduction of the alignments that were presented at the November open house, and some other alignments that were considered prior to rolling into that open house. Wanted to walk through some of the decision-making approach, framework and decision criteria and selection process, how we scored things, where we landed with the preliminary alternative, and what we walked through that Market Street alignment recommendation. Now, from a starting point, and this is the part where me as an individual, I'm an engineer by trade. I can tell you that this costs more than that. I can tell you that this will take longer than that, but I can't tell you how much emotion is going to be associated with something. I mean, that's something that unfortunately my wife accuses me of as well, that I do lack emotion in some cases. But what I do when I make decisions is I try to take as much emotion out of it as possible. And I know that's very, very challenging. But what I needed to do is I needed to roll things forward and, get to a point where I can have some of the elected representatives of the community participate in a review process. And so we know there's a wide variety of alternatives that can solve a solution. We have basically, 3,000 properties. We received $50 million from FEMA to address this issue. The state legislature has supported both the North Shore Levy and the North Shore Levy West to the tune of $35.5 million over the next four years, or I guess 3 remaining years. And so, at the end of the day, when you talk about the impact associated with this is too important of a project to look at it in just kind of this black and white function. So what we did is we rolled together a focus group, but that was after we had confirmed this pre-scoping meeting. Part of the challenge is that when you talk about a mega project like this, there's a lot that goes into, a whole host of decision-making that goes into making very minute adjustments, evaluations, and so on and so forth. The traditional process for, big projects like this is the outreach is facilitated principally through the environmental review process. So in our case, we have the NEPA pre-scoping meeting. We have the environmental assessment review. We have, and these are all public comment periods where, formal testimony can be received. We're going to have the 401 water quality permit. We're going to have the SEPA, and we're going to have the shorelines permit process. There's 5 total opportunities to provide public comment on this. And in most cases, basically what you do is you initiate some alternatives, and then you initiate your environmental review process. You throw everything into a stew, you evaluate your cost, your environmental impacts, and a whole host of things as part of that environmental review process. And get to a point where you can establish a preferred alternative that incorporates public impact, cost, environmental impact, so on and so forth. And unfortunately, at this point in time, and that's kind of the point of this slide right here, is we kind of were told to do things backwards and by people. So, when you want the king's shilling, you have to do the king's bidding, unfortunately. And so that's what leads me here to this point. So we had to pivot, we had to roll something for us to talk about, something for us to consider. Basically FEMA said, we need you, the city of Aberdeen, to confirm a preferred alignment, prior to the pre-scoping determination, so that we can roll that through the EA and kind of evaluate things. Now, one thing that I think is super important to identify is that Oakwood is going through this process right now. They are, I think they're just about to get their comments back from FEMA on the environmental assessment. And so through the EA process, the alignment has changed a whole bunch. And so what my expectation is that likely this is going to change quite a bit by the time we get to construction. But at the end of the day, my request today is to get to some sort of preferred alignment so that we can ask FEMA to move forward on the EA process so that we can work to solve the solution. So starting kind of back at the beginning, we looked at 6 different alternatives from basically Dean Street to the North Aberdeen Bridge. Again, I apologize. It's a very big area and, you know, the photo doesn't do it justice, but we'll run through each of these alternatives. And I apologize for the time that it will likely take, but I recognize that it is a big, important process and topic. So the 6 alternatives, we've got 4 on Market Street. We've got the conditional letter of non-provision that was submitted in 2017 that basically shows the levee going on the north side of the Market Street. We have a revision, which is running a flood wall running down the center of the road. We've got a 3rd alternative as it relates to Market Street with it running down the south side, and a offshoot of that south side, which we're calling the preview option. It's just a brand, product brand that I thought was interesting that somebody else was utilizing in Indianapolis. We've got the relocation option, and then we've got the Wishkah River option. So chewing through each one of these alternatives, which we do right quick. The north side is pretty straightforward. Concrete flood wall would go on the north side of Market Street. You still have bidirectional traffic. And the properties to the south side would not see flood protection. The advantages associated with this one, you know, again, is consistent with previous messaging. It is exactly what was submitted back in 2017. We only have 4 driveways that are impacted, and there's, you know, moderate utility relocation efforts. The disadvantages, unfortunately, you've got 11 cross streets. From a cost standpoint, it does require street closures to be cost competitive. And most of the acquisition, this actually has the most property acquisition for the Market Street alignments outside of the relocation option. Unfortunately, street parking does need to be eliminated when you look at the graphics. And the big one, in my opinion, on this alternative is Market Street is inaccessible during, prior to, during, and after a flood event. The center of the road option was a idea that was kind of born out of, we want to avoid right-of-way impacts. And so the intent here is to, you know, put a concrete flood wall down the center of the roadway. You still allow, you know, bidirectional traffic. However, each side of the traffic would be on either side of the barrier. Again, same sort of concept. The southern properties would not yield any flood protection. This one has the least right-of-way impacts. Again, a little cartoon graphic down there at the bottom is, you know, trying to provide some indication of what it would visually look like. It's not a great rendering, but it's better than nothing. It does minimize closures. However, the biggest closures are at intersections, which would likely require intersection control. This does have the least utility impact options or utility impacts associated with this alternative. And then from a operation and maintenance standpoint, this one's pretty straightforward. Forward, it's a concrete wall that runs down the center of the road. just like a Trucy barrier you see on I-5. Not ideal, not something that I'm excited about, but at the end of the day, it does provide the flood protection that we're trying to accomplish. This one does generate a requirement for U-turns for everybody on the south side of the Market Street. And this is one that actually kind of led to the development of the preferred alternative. Because we're trying to think about, from an intersection control standpoint, how are we going to deal with it? Do we want more stoplights there? No. Now, that's going to make it even more challenging. But putting roundabouts in, that's not ideal. And I know people aren't excited about that. So at the end of the day, we still had a whole host of challenges to address with this. And then, as you'll know, street parking is also impacted. One thing that I have not addressed on the first slide is that up in the top right corner, you've got a rough order of magnitude cost. Again, we're not going to go through the new detailed cost estimates on 6 different alternatives. That's just not effective from a time standpoint, but we can put together a rough order of magnitude cost that identifies, hey, if we're going to use X number of lineal feet of concrete flood wall at this lineal foot cost, this is ballpark what it would end up being. So the first alternative, which I'm showing here, is a rough order of magnitude cost of 25 million plus or minus 15%. The center of the road is also 25 million plus or minus 15%. And then the south side, which we just peeked at the next slide, is also 25 million plus or minus 15%. We'll get to the other alternatives here in a minute, but talking about the south side, again, when we kind of work through these, there's not a lot of great options. The key piece is what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the best option to solve the problem. In this scenario, the thought process was we wanted to make sure that we could keep the roadway open during a flood event and maximize the ability to move, both to and from North Aberdeen, allow people to evacuate from North Aberdeen during an emergency event and allow, vehicular traffic to continue moving. This one does have a lot of driveways and cross streets, and 22 driveways and 3 cross streets. And not very practical to have, access at all of them. It does make it a challenge, and it does dramatically add cost. The positive side, though, is that access at intersections is maintained, and we do have a larger street width open during a flood event. On the downside, most of our sewer lines are on the south side, and that does require a significant amount of utility relocation. And so the southern alternative impacts those utilities and requires us to move them. This one does require some moderate property acquisition. And again, very similar to the other Market Street alternatives, we do have street parking impacted. And one of the most important pieces that we kind of kicked around is when we have a vehicle that pulls in, and I think of Mr. Stable's house, for example, when you pull in head first, and then you have to back out with a 3.5 or 4 foot wall, that will obstruct the view, and that's something that I want to make sure that we avoid, or you end up backing into the property. It creates headaches that we want to make sure that we avoid. The free view option is one that it's we've got some unbelievable renderings up there on the top left. This is what it looks like on the waterfront. These are just renderings. I'm not aware of those actually being installed anywhere. The actual installation is shown on the bottom and on the right. The city of Indianapolis uses a system like this. This is for, I want to say, 800 or 900 feet. This system was installed. This does have a lot of advantages, and what my intention was is, hey, is there a way that we could bake that into a sidewalk? And basically, utilize that as the sidewalk, and that now provides the flood protection options that, again, that we're looking for. From an advantage standpoint, it does, it's great from a visual standpoint. It is automatic operation. One thing that I didn't show here in this image, down in the bottom right, you can see basically water comes in and it fills up, and hydraulically the weight of the water itself lifts the lifts the gate. And so it's a pretty slick system. And so it eliminates the need for operators to close those accesses. And like I said, it can function as a sidewalk. From a disadvantage standpoint, for one, the rough order of magnitude cost up there at 32 million plus or minus 15%. The prior applications are for mostly pedestrians and minor driveways. The challenge, I think, the biggest challenge is to look at a longitudinal system like this. All it takes is one parked car and the entire system doesn't work. And so that's something that, again, we need to figure out, is that the right way to go? And then the engineering team did have some concerns associated with the durability after 25 years. You know, the intent is for a life cycle of a product like this or a project like this, 50 to 100 years. So a 25-year durability is something that we need to be very careful about. The fifth option here is the relocation option. This is, as you can see, Market Street remains as it is. The properties to the south of Market Street are acquired and an earth and vegetated berm is installed to mitigate the flood risk there. This one, from a construction cost standpoint, is the lowest cost alternative. I think at the time that this was prepared, you know, we're looking at roughly 8 million from a construction cost standpoint, but there's an expectation of 20 million or so in buyout. So plus or minus the 28 million for rough order of magnitude cost is, you know, the ballpark that we were looking at there. So it puts it in a comparable bucket with the, I guess, in between the Market Street alternatives and the previous version. So again, from an advantage standpoint, it does minimize the unprotected parcels. We do have a responsibility to relocate individuals. And so the thought process here is that the intent is not to remain unprotected, is to provide relocation for them so that they can get to a place that is either protected or in a different location. It does provide opportunities for public access and amenities, as was previously identified. It also provides opportunities for environmental mitigation, such as floodplain benching, so on and so forth, which again, at this point in time, we don't know what the expectations are going to be. It is the lowest operation maintenance costs. Earth and berms, just like what we have on the south side, are the lowest cost alternative as it relates to operation and maintenance, as well as construction. But they do have a very wide footprint. Again, from a construction standpoint, they are very simple. You have the center columns and keyways so that water can pass and, you know, fill on the sides and build it up. From a disadvantage standpoint, we are anticipating, you know, complex negotiations that does impact our schedule. And as you heard tonight, it's a very emotional subject. And so it's not something that is to be taken lightly by any way, shape or form. But as the title implicates, relocation would be required. The sixth option considered was the Wishkah River alignment. And in this case, basically it would be a sheet pile flood wall that would be put on the base of the river. And the important piece is to maintain a distance between the flood wall and the shoreline, specifically so that access can be provided to get from point A to point B. We have a responsibility, if we're to construct a structure like this, we have a responsibility to maintain the flood wall, repair it as it gets damaged, inspect it on a regular basis. There is an expectation that we are going to be responsible for that asset. So in doing that, part of what we require is we require easements. We're actually coordinating these with other property owners in other areas along the alignment. That's a 15-foot wide easement so that we have the ability to drive vehicles down the, you know, 3 miles of levee so that we can conduct inspections on a regular basis. There is an expectation that after a flood event, we're going to have to go down and you know, get eyeballs on it. So the Wishkah River does require mooring construction. And so when you start thinking about, you know, how developed that shoreline currently is, the concept of building a flood wall on the other side of either these commercial structures or the residential structures, it's just not conceivable to do it from land and build over the houses. You have to do it from the water. And so that does impact the cost. This one is the most expensive alternative with a rough order of magnitude cost of 35 million plus or minus. This one does have, some of the key advantages. It protects, access or protects all of the properties along the corridor. And we are already gonna have marine, construction components out there. So we are gonna have equipment overlaps. The disadvantage is that, when we look at environmental impacts, there's a sequence that you go through. It's, avoid, minimize, compensate, or mitigate and compensate. So that progressive approach is part of the review process. And so part of what we would have to do is we would have to demonstrate that it is the most beneficial alternative to go throughout that and create that massive impact that I think it would be tough to defend, unfortunately, with the Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife and Ecology and US NIMS. There are a number of property owner docks and water accesses that would be impacted, and so we would have to provide gates, closures, facilities there so that, those property owners would maintain their access. The wall height in yards would be roughly 4 or 5 feet plus or minus. This one does require, right of way acquisition along the shoreline. We don't have any right of way over there. Good news is that there's lots of guidelines that are also owned by people that are not adjacent to property owners. So there is, some value there, but I think the biggest challenge with this one is the schedule and, proving to both the state and federal agencies that this is, the least environmentally damaging alternative. So basically what we did is we utilized a multi-criteria decision analysis to kind of walk through and sequence these. And so what I'd like to do is bounce over and have Becca play 2 minutes and 30 seconds of this video so that you can kind of see the process that we went through. Want to be clear, Knox was not part of this. this is a good place to stop. So the rest of that YouTube video is about making decisions on medicines, as he just said. But I thought it was a very valuable tool to kind of identify the generalized framework associated with what a multi-criteria decision matrix or decision analysis is. Yeah, this is something that we use all the time in the engineering world. I use it to select consultants. We use it for, pump selections. We use it for a variety of different pieces based on a variety of different criteria that we believe are important to us. And so this kind of leads me back to, the key piece is that when staff went through this, again, I do this on a lot of projects. And again, bear with me, I'm an engineer. That's why the number thing actually makes a lot of sense to me. But I ran through these and went, I need to get other people involved. So, but first, before we walk into that, I want to walk through the criteria that we used in the evaluation. So we used 10 criteria to kind of simplify things. With 10 criteria, I know. So the first would be cost effective, the capital cost to construct the alternative. The second is, schedule impacts, how is that project or alternative going to impact the permit and construction window? The parcels protected, the quantity of parcels protected relative to the other alternatives. And so you have to have a baseline when you start looking at that one. But again, each of these, well, the next item is traffic movement. And so part of what we wanted to evaluate was the difference between, normal operations, at the end of the day, and actually we had a meeting today about this. When we have a flood protection structure like this, the intent is that it's going to be out of service for 99.99% of the time. We're not going to need that flood protection every day of the year. And so we need to learn how to live with the system that we construct. And so that concept of how are we going to be using this roadway on a day-to-day basis was a very important piece to some individuals as we went through this. But I wanted to make sure that that piece was captured, and you'll see on the next page, during emergency events, that is also captured. The last one on this page before we move on is the level of effort to conduct annual operation maintenance efforts. I just alluded to the emergency services. The intent with this bucket was to really kind of look at, how are emergency services going to be able to move during a flood event, during a scheduled closure in advance of a storm when we have to facilitate closures. At the end of the day, if there's a medical call, we want to make sure that we still have the ability to provide services on the other side of the structure or on the other side of the river or on. So the next item is consistent messaging. This actually was a change, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. We had originally looked at utility impacts, but the focus group, thought it was better to switch it to consistent messaging because we have this historic component associated with the structure, the project. I mean, this is not the first time we've talked about the project. It's been going on for a number of years. And so the value associated with that consistent messaging was a piece that people wanted to look at. The next item is the environmental impacts, which is, the probability of adverse, impacts or mitigation requirements that will come out of the next step associated with this. And then property acquisition is a key piece, obviously the quantity and scope of the easements and or property acquisitions. And then the last item is the risk of change. Anytime we go into a construction project, we know things are going to change. We have, obviously, one thing that we don't have to deal with on a regular basis is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife or U.S. NIMS, and you have the potential for change at both the permitting level, the right-of-way level, and the construction level. And so when we think about, how do we minimize change orders or how do we minimize different site conditions, those are things that we want to make sure that we kind of find a way to capture. And so, with that focus group, we took that information and said, do we want to change anything? And as we see, we saw one item was changed, everything else kind of made sense to the group. And the next step was really to kind of chew through the weighting of each of these 10 criteria. So a good example here is, this is something that we were just kind of throwing together. There's 3 buckets in this example. You've got a critical, important, and significant, rated 15%, 10%, and 5%. At the end of the day, when we wanted to put these in front of all of the individuals that were involved with this, and basically kind of tailor that multi-criteria decision analysis to each of those individuals, and then throw them on the stew and take the average of all of them. And so that's exactly what we did. And so we had 6 elected officials associated with this. Now, I want to be very clear, it wasn't 6 current seated elected officials. It was 4 seated elected officials, in October, and I updated it after those seated individuals, or after 2 of those seated individuals had transitioned out with the new individuals. So, but we already had their information, so I thought, hey, let's leave it in here. And you can see with the color coding, the range, each column is identified, red is the lowest and green is the highest. And you can see the distribution associated with that. And one thing that I think is important to point out, from a space standpoint and from a privacy standpoint, I wanted to make sure that, hey, if people want to, identify which one they were, for example, mine was S2 on that part. And so, obviously if you feel so inclined, feel free to share later. But at the end of the day, my focus is that I wanted the individuals to be able to make that decision on whether or not they wanted to share. Now, again, after we confirmed that composite weight, we scored each alternative individually. And so each alternative was given a score of 1 to 5 based on each of those buckets. And at each scenario, we looked at and modified the numbers, and I guess we'll just dive right into it. So for example, when we look at cost effective, the first thing we rolled out, everything else was hidden because we didn't want to see a score. We didn't want to see the outcome. We didn't want to be influenced by anything else other than looking at that item and making a decision about that item. And so we focused on cost effective, looked at the rankings and said, okay, based on, the north center and south side, being at 25 million and the others being at the rough order magnitude cost that they were, that structure for scoring made sense to us. And then we moved on to the next one, and that was the sole one that we focused on. And we went all the way to the end and opened it up and looked at the composite scoring, which is the math running it all the way through. And we're very surprised to see the relocation option was the preferred alternative. Now, I'll tell everybody in this room, when we walked into this focus group, everybody had a different opinion of what their favorite alternative was. By the end of this, I think everybody went, oh, yeah, I think that makes sense. Now, I know there's a lot of work that we still need to do to get from point A to point B, including the environmental assessment and go through a lot more work. But one thing that I thought was interesting, and I was just curious, when we look at the groups that were involved in this, we've got elected officials, we've got staff involved. And so just for giggles, I stripped, certain scenarios out to see, okay, is there any outliers? Is there anybody swinging the data one way or the other? And consistently, the relocation option continued to be the preferred alternative. It didn't matter how we sliced the pie, looking at the people that participated. So then we moved into the preliminary alternative. And this was a figure from December that FEMA wanted to have in their hands for digestion. And at that point in time, we had considered, okay, well, based on the scoring that we had and based on many of the comments that we received, I don't know if that levy along the water, in addition to the environmental concerns that our environmental professionals were telling us, saying it's going to be a nightmare to get through. You don't want to do that. So we ruled that out and said, okay, the top two alternatives at this point in time are the levee, the earthen berm, or the center of the road. Then at that point in time, you know, I would need to point out that the scores have recently been slightly modified based on the addition of the two new individuals in March, but whether we look at the south side of the road, or the center of the road, you know, looking at this red line that just goes across the paper, drawing the design team, we call it the back grand, process, you know, because we're looking at the entire area when we look at environmental impacts or cultural resource impacts or, you know, any of those impacts as it relates to this. But this doesn't give us any indication of what the project's gonna look like. How are we gonna get from point A to point B? That's not gonna take us to construction. And so we continue to kind of refine the process. And our thought process, after we've kind of bounced a bunch of different things around, a bunch of different alternatives and options and sketches and too many to count. We ended on basically beginning the levee at B Street, which is consistent with the providing the closure near B Street to access the water side of the levee, to facilitate the inspections. And at the end of the day, that water side may be used for public recreation or mitigation. Now, the second half is I think what gets people's attention. You know, the target really is to get to a point where we can continue to facilitate traffic mobility throughout that corridor, minimizing those disruptions on a day-to-day basis. And basically the intent was to transition to a flood wall at Chicago and elevate Market Street up to the bridge. You know, when we talk about we're gonna be making modifications to the bridge, how that's gonna shake out, I don't know. That's a question mark as well. But the intent is that we're talking about two construction projects that are likely gonna be doing work at around the same time, at around the same location. It seems to make sense that we might have some economy of scale. So I think the most important piece associated with this is that by elevating the road, it eliminates the access restrictions south of that flood wall, other than the four houses that are currently shown. One individual mentioned that tonight. Now, part of the reason why we showed, you know, two different options here is specifically because of that resident's house. I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to talk to them and find out which way you wanted it to go. At this point in time, I don't know. I know we still need to move things forward to get FEMA moving on the VA. I know this, as it's currently laid out, is going to change, and that we're going to have to confirm the alignment again in the future. But what I don't know is how much it's going to change. You know, and there's going to be a lot of information that is going to continue to progress moving forward. But there were a couple of things that I think were asked of me before the meeting that I think are important to kind of, you know, point out. So if council doesn't mind, you know, like I said, I did receive a few questions. I'd like to go through those responses here first. Or for anything else. So the first question was, you know, given the area east of B Street was designated as a extra flood risk, is not building a berm or levee an option for some of the area east of B Street? And so it's funny because I've been trying to understand why that area was designated a zone X. The base flood elevation for that area is 13.0 as shown on the FEMA's flood maps. Most of the land in that area is, you know, 11 to 13 feet. And so I honestly, I don't know. But what I do know is that the hydraulic modeling that was completed in 2017 and that is currently underway right now, it also shows the same flood risk as the rest of the AE zone, or the floodplain. And so while technically, I don't think we have to, I think it would be a horrible idea not to, if that makes sense. So that's the answer to that question, is choosing not to sell an option for owners with structures within the footprint or construction zone. So anytime relocation is required, we comply with the Uniform Relocation Act and the appropriate Washington State rules, regulations. But I want to be very, very, very clear. When it comes to eminent domain and initiating eminent domain, that's not something I do. That's not something Rick does. That's not something Ruth does. That's something that comes before the council enacts an ordinance, and we say we are going to initiate eminent domain on it. So generally, that's something that is quite undesirable, for a couple of different reasons. When you initiate design, you go through the process, negotiating with the property owner, and then for whatever reason, things change at the last second. We have to scramble with our design and make that change to accommodate that, or we initiate eminent domain, and that's it. That's a decision point. Right now, we're not at that decision, so we're a ways off from it. The next question was, will there be more pumps to pump out groundwater, which is currently really high during the rainy season? We are still working on the interior drainage analysis. At the end of the day, we're putting the levee up. The levee is to stop water from getting out. Also going to stop, or it's to stop water from getting in. It's also going to stop water from getting out. So we need to make sure that we are helping that water get out there. That addresses the second question. One question did come up as it relates to the natural runoff from letting the river, or natural runoff flowing out to the river underneath the soil. I believe there were some public comments associated with this, as well as other things that I've heard about, when you see the tide go out, you see streams that are going out as well that come out of the ground. And so that's something I want to follow up with the designers, just to make sure that my gut's telling me it's capillary action, but I want to confirm. And then the design life of the berm, an earthen levee is going to far outlive, the 50 to 100-year design life of steel or concrete structures. There was a question about the magnitude of earthquake that a berm is designed to meet, and I don't have an answer for that one. I'll have a question about that. I don't know if I'm going to get an answer on that one. The earthen berms need to be maintained free from trees and plants. Yes, earthen berms need to be maintained free from trees and plants. What additional labor will be required to maintain the length of the berm? Berms are, as I talked about during the presentation, berms are the lowest cost alternative, both from a construction standpoint and a standpoint. What outreach has been done today? Not a lot since I started. I know. The biggest challenge is to get FEMA moving after the announcement was made in 2022. It is 2 years and we still have not moved off of the ledge. And so the normal process, as I kind of indicated earlier, is that you utilize the environmental review for the student for alternatives as you're looking at both construction alternatives and environmental impacts. So that is, I think, the next step is we want to utilize that traditional method to chew on the alternatives, the impacts, and most importantly, that's where those final decisions should be made. And this is a preliminary alignment confirmation. So I think after we confirm this, the design team then begins on completing the environmental assessment. And after the EA, I'm sorry for the acronyms, but it's so much easier. After the EA is complete, FEMA goes ahead and holds the public comment period. But in my conversation with FEMA the other day, an open house is also planned so that we can see what the determinations are, where the impacts are, what the concerns are, and it's another opportunity to kind of close the gap on, is this the right thing, or should we continue making adjustments? Again, after that is complete, we still have the 401, SEPA, and shoreline processes that we can also go through. So I also received a question about, consequences of delaying the decision tonight. So I don't know if I said earlier, but this is unfortunately the critical path, is initiating environmental review. I can push our design team and I could have, plans and specs ready by probably first quarter of next year. I think we could push and we could make that happen, no problem. What I can't push on and what I can't make happen is I can't move the federal agencies to process their permits any faster than, the 2-year window that they're saying that it's going to happen in. So that is telling me that is the absolute critical path. We need to start that process. That's why I'm here tonight, is to hopefully motivate that process. And then I think the last question related to, the economic impacts associated with, annual delays. So if we sit on this for a year, you're looking at, roughly, 3 to 5 million a year. The cost is going to escalate, depending on inflation. And so, I mean, I'm not identifying that as a area of concern. That's an item that says, the longer we delay, that's 250 to 400,000 a month. The longer we delay, the more we're gonna have to go find. And so I feel like we're in a very good spot from a construction cost standpoint, project funding standpoint. But the longer we delay, the more we're gonna have to go find. So I think that kind of concludes it. I didn't keep track of my time. Hopefully Rick did, and I can get you all that later for it. So happy to answer questions now.
Thank you, Nick. I think what would be really helpful for me and probably others is just to hear a quick overview as to why this is so important to Aberdeen. And especially the residents and business owners who will be most impacted with this, Market Street, leg.
Gotcha. Well, the quick elevator pitch that we gave to the state legislature is that, the North Shore levy, specifically on both the Aberdeen and Hope segments, protects over 3,100 properties. And the opportunity to remove the requirement for, number one, flood insurance, it creates a economic advantage for the community. The second piece, I think, is much more less known. And if you go to redevelop a property in the floodplain, you must meet the floodplain standards, which means you have to elevate to the base flood elevation plus 3 feet or flood proof it. And so there's an economic cost associated with that. So a perfect example in a meeting today about pump station 13, the designer was saying, hey, do you really want me to have elevate this, sanitary pump station 5 feet above the base flood elevation or to 5 feet above the ground? Because that's where we needed to get to. And so there's economic impacts across the board. So that does provide a lot of opportunities for redeveloping, a number of old structures. Even on our side, when we talk about our ratepayers, our community members that are paying for those sewer infrastructure improvements, I don't want to increase that. I don't need to increase that elevation. So, we have to find ways around that, and that's either delay that project or, so I've gone way too far into the weeds, but the bottom line is that it provides a massive impact for over 3,100 property owners as it relates to flood insurance and, redevelopment opportunities. And protection against sea level rise. I'll let that one on. Sorry.
So, is this a time to ask more questions? And, I don't want to monopolize. Any other council members have questions? I can wait.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I did go out, and visited a couple of the homes that are, on Madison Street. I wanted to have a visual of what we're looking at impacting. And what I saw was a lovely community of about 50 or so homes that, represent, an important part of our annual tax base. And so the cost of purchasing, buying out people is one thing, but I think also we need to look at what's the loss to the city's income every year by not having those homes. It's, I mean, we're short of housing now, and that's, in a sense, that's a vital part of our economy. It's obviously a vital neighborhood, and it got me wondering, could there be, and I know it's going to cost more, but could we do another hybrid that adds a seawall along the riverbank from Chicago around to where it would connect with whatever's being done over by the Kurt Cobain Bridge. And yes, it costs more money, but we would have the savings of not buying out the property owners who could then stay in their homes. And I understand the emotion because these people have invested in their homes, invested in our community. They are our community. And I think we owe it to them to look for a way to protect their existence. As we are looking out for downtown and we're looking out for all these other places, I think it's worth at least, I know it's a hard route, but to give it a try. And I really want to see us not cutting off this swath of Aberdeen residents as we look to the future. Is that possible? Is that what, as far as tonight's vote, is there a way to not to vote and not have something set in concrete, as it were?
I wouldn't even call it really setting it in concrete, it's kind of setting it in mud. But, Rick, do you have any thoughts on that? You want to jump in here or no?
Well, I would like to add that what you're asking was considered. That's the whole point of all those alternatives that was considered. That's what came up with the roughly $10 million more and delay in property. So it's $10 million more, but it also delays the project, which is another $3 to $5 million a year. So you're looking at $15 or $20 million. If the community's okay with us not having it and waiting and spending $20 million more, then that absolutely, that could happen. His criteria was based on very, very engineering terms, right? Cost. It wasn't based on feelings, and we understand how hard that is, but that was our role. Our role was to see what's best for the community, the city of Aberdeen, not for any one particular group, because no matter what, people are going to be hurt. One thing you should remember is right now, the city of Aberdeen, I think the last time we looked at it was the city of Aberdeen has an assessed value of 1.375 billion, something like that. And we're a city of 17,000 people. the city of Ocean Shores is a city of less than 10, and they have an assessed value of 2 billion without the industrial infrastructure. So what's happening is our homes that are in the interior basin are unable to be developed, remodeled, kept up, just because of the permitting requirements that are being hit with them, not by us, but by FEMA and the flood insurance requirements. These are not things, and I hear a number of people saying that it's never flooded. I'm kind of in the same boat. I get it. I've never seen it flood. It's not something we want to do. It's something we're being told we have to do. We don't have the ability to check or change the FEMA floodplain. We're not doing that. You know, we get a mandate and we have to follow the federal government guidelines, same as, you know, anybody else does. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
I think the value of the levy is important, but this last leg is in question. And I was looking at there was a report done, the effect of climate change on the hydrology of the Chehalis Basin. And they predict that by 2100, sea level will rise 2 feet. Well, that gives us time in terms of flooding, that most of the flooding in Aberdeen is from heavy rains. And we're going to get a lot more heavy rains with climate change, and we need to be prepared for that. To me, that says we take the long view and we do what's right, and we start on the levee bits that we can construct, and we make sure we've got pumps that are going to deal with the increased rainfall. But it's not just emotions around whether to carve out a section of our community. It's economics. You know, I'm on the finance committee. We don't have a lot of sources of revenue. Property taxes are a big one. And having a park is not going to bring the city much needed revenue as we so desperately need. So
Can I just say something, Liz?
yeah.
So I believe this money is also on a time constraint. If we put it off too long, we just lose it. So it's not like it's gonna be waiting for us, number one. And number two, there's a lot of industry that would come into our area if this levy were in place. They're waiting to come in. So I understand that some properties may be lost, but I also understand that this map that we've been giving today is not in cement. It's gonna move. I mean, it's not exactly where it's gonna be. This just gets the ball rolling. The map isn't, I mean, it's not like this is in cement, just like you said, it's in mud, but it's gonna move a little. So.
I think one more comment. I just want to make 2 quick points. And the first is, no matter what we choose, it's painful, but we're looking at 25-ish homes holding back 31 homes. The whole city of Aberdeen it's holding back that. And I'm not making light of that. That's horrible. But what you also said was that we'd use it to build parts of the levee and pumps. We don't get our 50 million unless we have an accredited levy. And that's a connection from point A to point B. We can't even spend any of it until we have a plan in place to have an accredited levy. And with gaps, that's not accredited, and we don't have any money.
How do you respond to the community members who haven't been involved in the process, and who have no idea, will they be bought out at their assessed value? Will they be bought out at market value? Will they have enough money to find a new home and with prices going up? We owe them some sense of guidance on this.
It's called the Uniform Relocation Act, or Uniform Act. And there is provisions in place, because in the past, things like that did happen. They don't happen anymore. They will get market value, they will get relocation costs, they will get their view, everything that goes into the price of that home will be accounted for.
The realtors are skewing the market, I don't think. What can be their market price? They want to go, the house is burned down, and we come up with, I've had 2
Sure,
strikes.
this isn't time for public comment. Thank you, though. You'll have another option at the end of the meeting.
I think that residents have come forward with concerns, and I think we will look at those properties. That this isn't, I mean, it's no one solid plan. It can be altered, but we have to start the ball rolling. We can't kick the can down the road continuously. This project has been in the works or talked about over 20 years. I mean, we need to start the ball rolling, and these people that have properties that don't want to lose their property, we don't know that they're gonna lose their property for sure yet. We can work on that. I mean, nobody is not acting like these people aren't important to our community. They are here. I don't want any of those homes to go, because I think we need to have more access to our waterfront, and those homes that have access right now are the very few in our city that do. So I'm all for whatever we can do to keep those homes, keep those people in their homes.
I feel the same way. Liz, I was part of that focus group. I was E3 for anybody that's keeping score. And I lost sleep over it. It was really hard. I came into that saying, I don't want to buy those homes out. I don't want to dislocate anybody. And I'm a renter. Okay. So I'm thinking about the low income residents down there. What are they going to do? Are they going to be made whole? And I think that everybody that sat in that focus group felt the same way. We read every single one of your letters. We do lose sleep over this stuff. We don't take it lightly. But that said, I'm prepared to move this forward because this has been in the works a long time. It is extremely preliminary. We need, with the caveat, we need to do a better job with outreach with everybody down there. It's preliminary, things are gonna change. But we need to work hand in hand with the residents down there, you're right. But we gotta get the ball rolling.
Any other questions I can help with?
Thank you, Nick.
All right, thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I was kind of distracted before, so I forgot that the council president.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to approve tonight's consent agenda to include the minutes from the March 27th meeting, accounts payable, payroll, and the March homeless expense report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and that's a long thing for me to repeat. So I'm gonna skip it. Is there any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion passes. All right. The mayor's report. So I just, there's a few things coming up I thought people might be interested. The Sound the Alarm campaign is put on by the Red Cross. And they've been here before, and they go into communities and they spend some time at homes in the community and put in as many fire alarms as they can, and carbon alarms. And that is going to take place at New Beginning Church on, gosh, I don't think I didn't put the date down, sorry. But if you wait at that church sometime at 9, between I'm sorry, I didn't put the date on my, okay, so. Thank you very much. Anyway, so it's a great thing. They have a lot of volunteers doing it, and they're always looking for more. And I plan on being down there to help install some fire alarms. The next thing is that Bayside Chats is a thing that's put on by the Dispute Resolution Center, coming up on April 13th, 10 to 12 at 2109 Sumner Avenue. That's the Pearsall building Sumner. And community chats, and it's regulated, but it sounds like it'd be interesting to go to, so I'll be there. And then finally, I wanted to thank everybody in our city and City Public Works, all the volunteers and the organizations that helped with the homeless camp cleanup last Wednesday morning. And they did a really spectacular job. It was amazing to see so many caring people in our community come forward to help these folks out and clean it up a little bit. So special thanks to Council President Morrison and Councilperson Barricini for being there also. And everybody can't be there all the time, but I'm glad to see anybody put in any time they can. I believe the next cleanup is on the 8th, May 8th. So if anybody wants to come and help, we appreciate all the help we can get. That's all I have. Council reports.
Mr. Mayor, a quick report.
Yes.
So in between the larger city cleanups that we're doing, our police navigator, behavioral health navigator has instituted a program called the Good Neighbor Program. And so what we'll be doing is going down there Tuesdays between 11 and 1:30 and just trying to model positive behavior to the residents down there, and work hand in hand with them so that they can keep their area clean. I was down there yesterday and I was pleasantly surprised how many were willing to pitch in and help. And a lot of really good constructive dialogue was had. So, if anybody on council would like to come down, just observe, have conversations or pitch in, we'll do that every Tuesday from 11 to 1:30. And then I also wanted to let you guys know that the homeless housing task force for the county will be meeting next week, and I've been appointed to that committee, and I will offer a report back to council at our next meeting.
And, you know, there was a fire at the homeless village about a week, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. And that was probably directly as a cause of construction. And these folks are allowed to live in tents because they need to have some shelter from the environment. But building unpermitted homes is not going to be accepted any longer. We're going to try and keep better track of that so that we don't have another huge blaze go out of control down there. Oh, sorry. Any other council folks? Nope. Okay, staff reports. City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make an announcement that the city was selected, the city of Aberdeen was selected for the Rural Technical Assistance Program through GS Consulting. This particular program is funded by the Department of Commerce. It's at no cost to the city. It will help the city navigate the complexities of getting a shelter or affordable housing or whatever the need is to solve homelessness here in Aberdeen. This particular group, GS Consulting, has helped the city of Shelton, has helped the city of South Bend, and a lot of other rural communities bring veteran housing, affordable housing, homeless shelters. So this is a really great opportunity for the city to help us, like I said, navigate the public perspective aspect of it through public engagement. They'll also navigate whether it's the city's finances, operational costs, all the different aspects of this. Rural communities are kind of at a disadvantage in comparison to larger cities because we don't have the same resources or funding resources or staffing resources to be able to navigate this. So this is a pretty big opportunity for us. It's very competitive And, it's a good, it's a step in the right direction if the city wants to solve homelessness. Also, we will be having a budget forum for the community on May 1st. That will be hosted, that will give the community an opportunity to talk about their budget priorities. We will be launching a survey on April 15th that will be used at the council, budget workshop on May 15th. So, we'll release that to the community. So I will get the QR codes, links out, and we'll get information out so you guys can share with your constituents. Again, this was a request from last year's, budget workshops. The request was by the council to bring forward opportunities for the community to have a voice in the budget preparation process. So, are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Record reports.
I wanted to bring up, I think it was 2 meetings ago, I said that I was gonna contact the DOT and let them know about that intersection at, Wishcon L. And I did. And, they have some new leadership there and they jumped on it and they fixed it today, so, or yesterday. So anyway, no, it was today. So it looks great. And that started out with a complaint from Al Gozart a couple of years ago when we first reported it. And I think you brought it up again here maybe a month or so ago. So just wanted to acknowledge the DOT for working with us and we've had a lot better relationship in recent times. So maybe we can keep that moving forward and we're helping them as well. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I was really excited. I saw him working on it this morning. It's an intersection that a handicapped person couldn't cross really without falling. So I'm glad they jumped on it. Any other directors?
Mayor and fellow council members, I shouldn't say fellow, because I'm not a council member. I'm Bill Seaver. I'm your code enforcement officer for the city of Aberdeen, looking out of the community bill. Over the first quarter of this year, we've had roughly about 155 complaints that have come in. That's on an average of about 51 complaints a month, just half the complaints a day. And there's just myself to work on them. I go out, I receive the complaint, then I go out, verify the complaint, and then I come back in and send out my notice. Sometimes if I know who the person is, or I've had contact with them before, I can give them a phone call as another complaint. And then proceed from there, give them the timeline that they have to fix the complaint, alleged violation. If I don't have a contact, then I send out a notice, and depending on what the complaint is, depends on whether I give them a timeline of 3 days or 14 days, which basically the courts have said that I need to do as far as what the timelines are. And then after that, I follow up from there and move forward, where we have to go. And, I'll either file a lien against the property if I have to go and clean it up, or I issue them citation and have them come to court and move forward from there. You can see, you've got different pages. One has open violations, closed violations that we have already taken care of. And then the other one is just exactly all the complaints that have come in and what they are. But the complaints
they vary, junk vehicles, building without a permit, others don't fall into any category. Garbage, zoning violations, overgrowns, buildings open to entry, whether it's a residence or commercial. Work without an engineering permit, operate in a business without a business license, unfit structures, evictions, utilities, graffiti, RV occupation, fences, and so forth. Do we have any questions?
So are these phone, if somebody's phone calls or calls in a complaint, that doesn't get on a report like this? or-
No. We receive complaints different ways. We have an online portal that I would prefer that people use, because once it comes in on that, it gets logged in, and if they provide, hopefully they're providing an email address on that login. Then whenever I do anything, I put it in what I've done on that complaint, and they get shot an email back to them, telling them what's been going on, so they can see that. That's the preferred method that I would like to have. The other option is a phone call. The problem with phone calls is some people don't want to leave a message. I get a lot, I want to talk to a real person. Well, this real person has to go out in the street and verify the complaint, look at it. So I'm not always at my desk, or I could be on the phone, or I could be doing something else in a meeting. So when I see phone calls that come in and there's no message, I don't know what the problem is. That's why I prefer that if they do phone in, that they tell me what it is, so that I can prepare when I call them back. I can give them some information. Maybe it's a complaint that I'm already working on. And then I can tell them, yeah, this is what's been happening, and we're moving forward on that. If they don't, they just say, can you please give me a call back? Then I don't know what they want. Sometimes it's a complaint that's outside the city. I get these all the times where they say, well, I'm not sure if I'm calling the right person or the right department. I just had one the other day that the people live are complaining about the trailer court in Costa. Well, it's an Aberdeen address, but I don't have jurisdiction 20 miles from the city. Another one was up in Elma on the Delazine Road for junk vehicles. Again, I have to call, unfortunately, that person, their voicemail is not set up, so I can't call them back and tell them we gotta call the county. Anything else?
Bill, are you gonna go over the permit revenue, or did you?
Oh,
want me to-
yeah.
Okay.
Also, just for clarification, before you do that, as noted on the agenda, this has nothing to do with the RFP for the homeless shelter. That'll be
Right.
forthcoming at a future meeting. This is your code enforcement permit update.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, the permit revenues, as you can see on the bottom, we're a little behind this year compared to the last couple of years. We're about, according to Lisa said, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of the 2020 evaluations. But you can see that we do bring in quite a sum of money. The last couple of years, we have been over our budget. I can't remember exactly how much, but we were brought in more than what we had figured that we were gonna be bringing in and what we needed to operate. But that's not always the case in our department. Sometimes, most of our money comes out of the general fund, so the revenues don't come in, then it comes out of the general fund. But we've been self-sustaining, self-supporting the last few years because of numerous large projects. We've got the Grace Harbor College project. We've got the silo project that is completed now over in the port. And we've got some other projects that are gonna be coming up.
Director Scott reported that there has been an increase in new home developments. So she did cite that as one of the increases, citing that there are possibly up to 12 plus homes that are built in Aberdeen. New homes, new construction.
And with the change that's coming about with the zoning code, hopefully that's going to increase where we'll get more homes coming in. Any other questions?
The other thing that was on the agenda for the RFP, I do have an update on that. We will be, bringing something to the council on the 24th for consideration, for your review and consideration. We wanted to bring it to this meeting, but we've been approached by a community resource group that would like to potentially partner with us and go in on an application together so that they can provide operational services. So we have to kind of negotiate that and see if there is a potential partnership. So we'll bring something to all of you on the 24th.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Bill. Let's see, finance.
That would be me. Finance Committee met tonight. We have, one resolution. Resolution amending resolution 2023-21 to remove specific names and designate the mayor and city administrator as representatives to the local government investment pool fund. This is an administrative cleaning up the authorization for those documents. I move we adopt this resolution.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution amending resolution 2023-21 to remove specific names and designate the mayor and city administrator as representative of the local government investment pool fund. All in favor, is there any discussion?
Whose names are being removed and why? What's going on?
So former mayor Pete Shave's name is still on the account. He's been, his name has been frozen informally, but his name will be removed. It's to leave general titles on there in the event that when we have a new mayor or a new city administrator, they could just come into that. This was a recommendation brought forward by the Washington State Treasurer's Office.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment passes.
This will be a resolution 2024-07.
Thank you. Public Safety Chair Hodgkin.
Okay, so, Aberdeen Police Department, they, had a request for their, police dog Mac to be sold to Thurston County Sheriff's Office because they have an officer that's moving to Thurston County Sheriff's Office. So that dog he was a canine officer, that dog will be going with him and will receive the amount needed to replace the dog and have a new canine dog. Public Safety Committee agenda, activity reports, they've had 9,843 calls so far this year with a total of 2,166 proactive traffic stops. So they've been getting a lot more traffic stops. And the VIPs, those are the people that, drive around and help the police department by reporting things that they see. They did a contribution so far in March of 237.5 hours in March. That saved the city almost $4,000, $3,866. During their patrol, they made several reports that resulted in arrests of 3 DUIs. So they're helping our police department keep our streets safer. So the canine handler was Chad Pearson. He'll be leaving on April 12th. He's making a lateral move to Thurston County Sheriff's Office. So that'll leave us with 4 vacant police officer positions. And we've got 2 backgrounds in progress so far. So they also have another group of candidates coming in this week, and oral boards are scheduled for next week. And we wanted to give a little shout out to Dallin Mitchell. So far this year, he's pulled over 25 DUIs. Most are drug and alcohol related. So he's doing a great job keeping our streets safer. And they seized 4 cars on drug busts this week. That was, oh, so they're doing a great job for us. Okay, so, we'll be getting a new, canine dog here pretty soon. So, City of Aberdeen Fire Department, they've had, March calls, they had, 551 incidents. It's up by about 2%. And then the homeless response data, they had 50 EMS responses this month, in the month of, March. And fire responses were 9, so a total response of 59 different calls to the homeless group. And then there's going to be a EMS rate workshop. So this may be something that the city might want to know. There's a reminder that there's going to be a council workshop. It's scheduled for Tuesday, April 16th. So that'll be next week at 6 p.m. to review the proposed EMS utility rates and ambulance billing charges. And this workshop will be followed by the requested public hearing on these rates. So just to let you know, Aberdeen Financial Consultant will be here to answer questions. If anybody has questions, and the public hearing will start at 7:30. So you can come with all your questions and your concerns, and they will be here to answer questions for you. Staffing update for the fire department. They currently have 2 vacancies. They're interviewing 2 people next week. And they're conducting a firefighter paramedic testing on Monday, April 15th. So their police department and fire department are working hard and doing a good job for us. That's the reports from them. That's it.
We have an agenda item.
Oh, we have a what?
An agenda item.
An agenda item. Oh, thank you, Casey. So the agenda item is the purchase of a new canine. Do you want to get us that, Casey?
I got you.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to move that, we accept the report for the request for, okay, so it's a request from Public Safety recommending that the city council authorize the request to serve the Boston Police Dog Mac and allow Thurston County to purchase him. I move we adopt this report.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comment? All in favor?
Bye.
Opposed? Report passes or is adopted. All right, Public Works, Chair Lawrence.
Yeah, we have a couple of reports this evening. First one is request from Public Works recommending that the city council confirm the North Shore Levy Market Street alignment recommended by staff displayed in figures 10 and 11. I move that we adopt this report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any comment? Hearing none. All in- yes.
Yeah, I'm probably going to vote to support this, but, I really expect, that the city and staff will work with the community to find, specific design, elements moving forward that truly work for everyone. Well, it's not gonna work for everyone, but that really takes into account people's needs.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No.
You said that quickly. Opposed, one opposed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nay. I oppose as well.
Mr. Mayor, can I request a roll call vote, please?
Yes. City Clerk?
Carter,
Nay.
Ellis,
Yes.
Gaken,
Yes.
Hodgkin,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Mackey,
No.
Morrison,
Yes.
Newbill,
Yes.
Archini,
Yes.
Grado,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-2, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And you got one at the park county.
Yeah, one more, request from Public Works recommending the city council authorize the mayor to execute the contract with the Grays Harbor Conservation District to provide education and outreach services. I move that we adopt this report.
Second.
Moved and seconded to request for Public Works recommending that the city council authorize the mayor to execute the contract with the Grays Harbor Conservation District to provide education and outreach services. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. That's all. Thank you. Public Works. Now we'll go back to public comments. Please limit it to 3 minutes and state your name and address or ward.
Steve Haywood, Fourth Ward, Highway 6. Anyway, I'm not very happy with, transparency that the city says they have. I've been waiting 6 months now for records requests. My attorney, who I disagreed with, talked me into emailing you one more time, asking you for those records requests. So I did. I finally got an answer back from our public administrator. It was an automatic reply, said she'll get back with me when she gets back in the office on April 8th. It's now April 10th. No reply. Casey Ann Morrison replied, "Thank you very much." Debbie Ann, I believe the mayor may have even replied. But I say 6 months for records requests is a long time. Somebody came up here last comment and said, city's lying to them. Yeah, city and staff lies a lot. So I will be contacting my attorney again next week, because I will give you till the rest of the week to get me the records that I've requested. October 13th, 2023. Thank you.
Any other comment? Oh.
Oh, I'm Joshua Francie for Ward 5. I do the clean streams and means cleanups and also cultivating roots community garden. I came here today to report on the totals that we've done this year. We've done 10 cleanups, of the 313 cleanups that we've done since 2013. We've got 7 volunteers this year. We've removed a quarter of a ton, 50 pounds per cleanup. A lot of things are 52, so 45 pounds of recycling, almost 200 cans, 300 plastic bottles, 50 glass bottles, and 536 recyclable containers altogether. 52 syringes, which an average of 5 per cleanup as well. I'm gonna clean up Fried Creek along Pacific Avenue on Sunday. Thank you guys for disposing of the garbage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
My name is Joe Powell. I'm from Ward 2. I don't want to take too much of your time. Do you have an announcement for the city? We're talking about the development at Grace Harbor College. The health permit was filed today for the student dining. That's part of the pilot program to provide free and like affordable food for all the students at Grace Harbor College. It's an $8 million facility. We're ready to go, folks. So anyways, I'm going to segue into what a Nobel laureate economist once said. That's what I studied, was economics. And he said that when you do policy, some win and some lose. And good policy is when there is more winners than losers. Some win, some lose. Good policy is when there's more winners than losers. I think it was Paul Krugman. When you take away somebody's home, though, I mean, this isn't, we're not talking about like, oh, this person's making this much, or this person's relative income has increased or decreased. I mean, that's really deep when you take away somebody's home. That's really interesting. And I heard a comment, you said, this isn't based on feelings, But, you know, my history with behavioral economics, it kind of is the way that rubric is set up, and that's very interesting. It's used as a consumer decision-making choice, kind of on a micro scale, and this is something on a macro scale. We say, what are the implications? What are the negative or positive externalities that come out of this? And I wonder, when you make a villain, essentially, is what, and the reason it kind of hits hard is because I was like with a crew, I think we planted like 600 trees behind that lady's house in the purple house. I mean, we were out there, we were in the mud. We have people, you know, out there getting down, especially older residents in town, working as hard as they could to improve that. And that was just recently. And so I'm really surprised to see that, oh, there's going to be this thing. And so I don't feel like I was engaged publicly. And last, the way that I would be affected by this is I'm part of that 15 to 18% bronze group rating. That's the access to emergency services. And that's a total farce because we don't have access to emergency services. You just let the houses burn down. It's common knowledge that you overdose there, you're probably going to die if you're on that side of the bridge. So you weight this access to emergency services, but that access to emergency service probably only, if you weighted it compared to statewide or national average, probably only have a 10%. We're probably in the bottom 10%. So make that a 1.8% in the rubric. And since the access to emergency service, that's kind of the feel good, right? So that can go with the environmental and the dislocation. So you have another 2 9%, 2 8% floating around. And I think that's going to go there. That's just one way to think about it. When you say it's not about feelings, I mean, these numbers are about feelings. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, anything for the good of the order? Okay. Yes, Councilman Holst.
As a council member, it's really a rarity that I get an email or phone call from a constituent. And I say constituent broadly because each of us represents all of Aberdeen. It's not just our board. And we really care what the community thinks, and we want to do our best to represent people. Don't hold back on reaching out to us, however works for you. There are a lot of really big decisions being made, and if we can, as your representatives, make these reflect what you'd like to see, then we're doing our job. So please reach out. And then April is traditionally National Poetry Month. And so I'm going to abbreviate a poem, if you'll indulge me. It's called Of History and Hope by Miller Williams. We have memorized America, how it was born and who we have been and where. In ceremonies and silence, we say the words, telling the stories, singing the old songs. We like the places they take us, mostly we do. The great and all the anonymous dead are there. We know the sounds of all the sounds we brought. The rich taste of it is on our tongues. But where are we going to be, and why, and who? The disenfranchised dead want to know. We mean to be the people we meant to be, to keep on going where we meant to go. But how do we fashion the future? Who can say how, except in the minds of those who will call it now? The children. And how does our garden grow with waving hands, oh, rarely in a row, and flowering faces and brambles that we can no longer allow? All this in the hands of children, eyes already set on a land we never can visit. It isn't there yet, but looking through their eyes, we can see what our long gift to them may come to be. If we truly remember, they will not forget. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I move that we adjourn our meeting.
Second.
Okay.